Okay, so we're back now. We're actually back into the main room. And I got the res from Latina, and I went ahead and gave her 15 platinum and gold that I had been picking up off of the creatures over here, just as it's really all I can give her. I mean, the other platinum I've got on my character was a gift from ZK, so I don't feel right just giving that away for reses. I'm sure he'd be fine with it. He'd be like, use it for whatever you need. But I'm gonna actually save it and use it for spells. Oh wow! I don't know what just happened there. He took some pretty bad hits. Might be getting a res. Oh, from earlier death. That's cool. Let me burn mana. Wait, no healer. Incoming Darkbone Skeleton. Well, I guess I'm going to have to be doing the healing on this one. Which is fine with me. I think I can handle it. Of course, I don't have clarity like I did before the res, but or before the deaths, I should say. Res didn't take that away. Yeah, I'm fine. I can do it. Hopefully. But I'll be back soon as res effect drops. Yeah, it's like a 5-minute wait on that one. The res effect in this game is so much worse than what I remember. I guess it's because it's been so long. I remember waiting, I remember waiting countless times in this game for things, for your power, for stuff like that, for a raid to reform after a res. I don't remember it taking 5 minutes. I don't know if that was something maybe they've added recently, or if that's the way it's always been and I just kind of blocked it out of my mind, because I guess at higher levels it really doesn't matter anyways, because you gotta wait for your power to regenerate. So when you start going on raids and everybody wipes, it will take about 5 minutes for everybody to rebuff, re-get their power up to full, and get ready to go anyway. So you probably aren't doing anything within that 5-minute time that you would normally be doing, whether that res effect was there or not. But in a place like this where you can get a res and then you can go sit back with your group, it is kind of a nuisance because you start off with 1 strength. So I don't care who you are, even a monk who... okay, maybe a monk probably might be able to do it, but a monk who has like 13 strength will probably be able to walk around. But everybody else who has like 80 points of strength on their guy at least, and is carrying a set of armor that weighs close to that amount, is not going to be able to move with 1 strength. That means you can carry 1 pound. I tipped the Cleric for reses. Yeah, same here. I also got heals up. I'm back up. Okay, so he's back. Let me zoom in. You guys probably don't want to see the back of my head for no reason. Oh, she's gonna give us some buffs. That's gonna be nice. Level 50 Cleric buffs are really, really cool. And of course, you gotta look at her. She's in all purple armor. That's the Plane of Hate Cleric only armor. It's not me. But yeah, that's really, really good armor. Probably the best in the game at this point. I mean, later on with further expansions, they kept coming out with better and better stuff. But right now, I think that's the best armor you can possibly get. And you got to remember, Plane of Hate and Plane of Fear and Plane of Air and all these other places, they're not zones that you can just get an instant, and that's your instant. They respawn, I think it's, man, what was it, like every week or every 24? It's not 24 hours. I think it was every week. But they respawn, and everybody on the server wants them. Because who doesn't want to go to the Plane of Hate 1 week or 1 weekend or something like that and go up there and get everybody in their guild good armor? I mean, unless you're like a Top Gear raiding group and you don't need that stuff anymore, you're trying to get better stuff from like the Machine's Peak or something like that, you want to go to the Plane of Hate and get some good stuff. And so you have to compete with other guilds, and on this server, from what I've heard some bad things and I've heard some good things. They have a table where they work it out, and they're like, okay, every guild is going to get equal chance to go to those places, and so you're this guild we worked out 6 months ahead of time. You get to go to the Plane of Hate on this weekend, and then you have to wait a whole another 6 months before you can go there again. So you got to keep in mind that you are kind of sharing it with everybody. That's why they came up with the instances, so that everybody could go more often. And I kind of like it when it comes to raid areas that you can go a little bit more often. But for me, instead of making it where there's instances, just make more raid content, period. Make it so that instead of having to share Plane of Knowledge or Plane of Hate and Plane of Fear with 6-month waiting list, make it where everybody on that 6 months waiting list can go to a different raid zone every weekend. You got 60 raid guilds on your server, then have at least 60 raid zones. And that way they can all go to different places. They may not need the armor in certain zones more than they need the other ones, and of course there's going to be your favorite zones that people like to go to and camp and get all the good stuff for certain classes. But with that in mind, you can still have a good time doing raiding. And they kind of did that in Everquest too. They added a lot more raiding places to go, and a lot more group-oriented places to go as well for the higher-end stuff, but nowhere near what they should be doing. And especially for this game, I wish they would have had, it didn't have to be a fantastic raid zone. It could have been a small kind of raid zone. Something to ease yourself into what raid zones really meant. With like Plane of Hate, you had to know how to pull the area really, really well. You had to do chain pulls and things of that sort. Plane of Fear had a lot of roamers, and so you had just a lot of deaths overall with the tanks. I mean, there'd be some times where you're in the Plane of Fear and you're all on that back wall, sitting there waiting for a pull, and 30, 40 minutes go by and you haven't gotten a pull. And what's really happening is, as the Cleric, I get to see this a lot because I'm the one rezzing everybody, is what really happens is the pullers have been trying to pull a manageable pull for the last 30, 40 minutes and been dying left and right all over the place. Getting rezzes, going out, doing it again, getting rezzes, going out and doing it again. Because breaking a zone like that and getting a handle on a small little area is really what you have to do. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's incredibly hard. Sometimes you can get lucky, and it's not that difficult. But most of the time, you're going to have a hard time breaking it. And there's just some nights where you'll sit there for 30, 40 minutes doing that. That's kind of cool. I mean, you don't necessarily have to have a huge zone. Just make it incredibly difficult. And guilds will still have a good time going and learning about how to do raids and introducing people to a little bit better loot. I mean, even if it had like 2 named guys in it, and that's it, just 2 names, but you made it so hard that it took like 3 hours to do. That's kind of cool. I mean, there'd still be people who would do it rather than doing nothing. Is my argument. Obviously, if you had other places like Plane of Hate to go to, why go to the small zone? But if you don't have Plane of Hate to go to because it's camped all the time and you're waiting for your chance to get in, then at least give them something else to do. Is my thinking behind it. They never really took advantage of that in this game as much as I kind of hoped that they would, and just come out with more content for the higher level guys to raid, because eventually, if you're serious about playing the game, and those are the people who are going to be, paying the most money into a game for their monthly subscription and stuff like that, are the people who are, the long-term players. And so, yeah, you do want to give a lot to the new people to get them hooked and get them interested in a game from a commercial standpoint, but you also want to make it where the people who are playing the game, the people who are paying you the most for the longest time, have a lot of stuff for them as well. And so I can kind of understand not having as much stuff for the in-between levels, from like level 20 to level 40 or something like that, not having too many dungeons to pick from. But the opposite seems to be the case. From like level 20 to 40, there are buttloads of zones that you can go to, so many that most people will never even go to a fraction of them, let alone actually hunt in the zones that they go to. Most of the time they're just passing through those zones that they never even went to in the first place, but it just seems a little off balance. And I know later on they actually went back and revamped Kazakh Duel, made it a higher level zone and things of that sort, but again, it was still geared towards groups, and it was just a higher level set of group zone for you to get a little bit more experience. But I don't know, I think people mostly want the challenge. They don't want just the loot or just the experience to level up. They want a challenge, and they want to feel like their challenge is worthwhile. Like whatever it was at the end, you know, the loot, even if they didn't get it themselves and it was there for a druid or it was there for a Shadow Knight, you know, even if they don't win it, they know the Shadow Knight creates that loot, that it's worth it to them. I mean, there's nothing worse than going to a raid zone, and I did this plenty of times in Everquest too, going to a raid zone, and you kill for an hour and a half, you destroy the entire zone, you get everything you can possibly get from it. And at the end of the raid, people were talking about the loot that they found, and they're like, "Yeah, it's okay. It's not as good as what I'm wearing already." What? Raid? I mean, come on. We just did an hour and a half. It took you know, 4 groups of 6 to do the zone, and nobody, not one person in the entire raid, needed any of the stuff that dropped because they got better from other places, not other raid zones, but just other zones. And I'm like, what was the point of that? Raid zones are supposed to have the best loot because it takes more people. It's, you know, more strategy, more in-depth understanding of the game and the character stats and just really everything in general. You know, you gotta be tip top to be able to do some of these zones, and yet the loot isn't always equivalent to it. And again, like I said, it's not always about the loot, but if the loot's not there, it just makes it feel like that whole journey, besides being fun and enjoyable because it's a challenge, was kind of worthless. Because why is everybody else going to come back? I mean, for me, it's about the journey, but for other people, sometimes they care about the loot. I mean, that's what brought them there in the first place. That's what keeps them in the seat for 2.5 hours or 3 hours, is the chance at seeing some really cool loot or helping their friends get some better loot so that they can then, you know, heal better or tank better and go to even cooler zones in the future. And yet, if you're constantly spending 2-3 hours in a zone and nobody's getting any better because you're not getting better loot for those classes, then that's really going to stagnate the guild, because they're not going to be able to go to new places, and they're going to constantly have to go back to the same zone over and over and over again. And, you know, no matter how challenging it is, there comes a point to where your guild knows it frontwards and backwards, and it's no longer challenging. You know, we did that plenty of times in Everquest 2 when I raided all the time. We'd get to a zone, and I tell you, man, it would be really hectic the first 3, 4, 5 times you go, and the more and more you do it, a little bit easier it gets. It's still pretty hard, but then there comes a point where you no longer have to remind people that, okay, this is this name fight, and we're all going to stand in this corner, and we're all going to, you know, pay the way when he's about to cast this spell, otherwise we all die. It's pretty crazy when you get there and everybody automatically runs to that corner, and everybody's already casting, you know, resist magic and resist poison before you even have a chance to put your hands on the keyboard. Like, everybody already knows what's coming, and people are all standing in their positions, and the tanks are all set up to pull, and everybody's already communicating with each other. And it's like, yeah, that's fantastic that people are paying attention and remembering what they need to do. But it's also a little bit of sadness there, because that means if you haven't already reached the point, you're pretty close to reaching the point where the zone's no longer a challenge. It's boring for the people. They're going to want something else probably pretty soon there, unless there's just some really, really good armor there that brings people back. But that's, again, my point is, unless you have that armor as like a little bonus, you know, people aren't going to want to stay there for long. And so, I don't know. I mean, just repeating myself constantly, I'm sure, but trying to drive that home is I wish they would add more zones to games in the future. Not just EverQuest, but any MMO, rather than adding instances. Instances, I believe, are one of the reasons it kills groups, it kills the game. You know, I mean, yeah, everybody can go into that zone anytime they feel like it, but that's the whole point. Everybody can go into that zone anytime they feel like it. So that zone's not that important. You know, greatest loot in the game, which can be camped 24/7, every day of every second. People can be in there getting that loot, and eventually the loot becomes worthless because it's just you know, over camped. Everybody has it. Nobody needs it. So why would I pay anything for it? Thank you for the buffs. Thank you for the group. Okay. So let's see. What did that cleric actually give us? Oh, she gave us Noltron's Mark and Heroic Bond. So let's look at our life. I can already tell the tank's life has gone up by like 1,000 points, and ours is pretty close to it as well. We're at 1,216 for our health, and I think we're at, what, like 400 before, 300 or something? Close to 400, so yeah, pretty nice. About another 800 points of health. Maybe 750. I don't know. So we'll have to look at it when it disappears. But and we got insight earlier. I told you we were going to look at it. We had 140, I believe, wisdom and 100 intelligence. So it did increase wisdom a little bit and increased intelligence as well. So if you get insight, or if you need that extra little bit of power, you know, you could always get that from the enchanter as a buff. We got resist disease as a higher than I should have, I guess. Still pretty low. My fire and cold and magic is 25, and poison and disease is only 15. So that's pretty low here. And you'll see I'm not really doing any attacking for a couple of reasons. I know I mentioned this already, but in case you guys hadn't watched all the other videos, these ghouls here can only be hit by magical weapons. And you'll see on the weapon I have, and many of you guys may have a weapon similar to it, is not a magical weapon. It's just a fine steel warhammer. It's a pretty nice weapon, but it's not magical. It doesn't, on the slot it says primary, secondary. It doesn't say lore. It doesn't say magical or any of those little stats on it. Now I can always summon a weapon. In fact, I'll do that real quick just to show you guys what the stats on that are. Hammer of Wrath. Especially since I'm not really doing anything else anyways. I'll wait. It does take a few seconds to come back. I believe 20 or 25 seconds for it to be able to be cast in the first place. But you know, you got to remember that it's something that you cast once and then you're done with it. Like, you don't really need to ever cast it again unless you go Link Dead. Of course, I get quite a few fizzles there because it's not a spell that I cast that often. You can see right here on my cursor is the little hammer, and it actually follows my cursor about a second behind it. It's not exactly right where my cursor is. So it's kind of cool to see that right there. But let me go ahead and heal him, and then I'll show you guys what that does. In fact, I'll put it up while I'm healing him so you guys have something to look at. But you'll see right there at the top, it says magic item, no trade, temporary. Temporary simply means, like I said before, if you go Link Dead or you camp, it disappears. It's gone. Which is fine because all it took was power to summon it anyway, so that's not that big of a deal. But because it's a magic item, that means you can hit these barbone skeletons, you can hit the ghouls. The other guys that we were fighting before, the mummies and stuff like that, you don't have to have anything special to hit. Let me go ahead and heal this guy. I'm out of power. But you can see the damage is 6, the delay is 22, it's one-handed blunt. That's usually what you're going to have as a cleric weapon, is blunt weapons. I think the sprinkler, if I remember right, is a blunt weapon. Let me see if I can heal Poochie. Oh. Great. With 2 clerics, we couldn't keep all our guys alive. That sucks. His sneak just killed him. I don't know why. If only I had a C heal. Yeah. Can't wait till level 49 and you get complete heal. It's a game changer for sure, but great. If I could find the key in the dark. Yeah, it takes something like 14 or 15% to do the heal, and it just wouldn't go off. I tried a lesser heal, which was the light heal, just to give him any amount of health that I possibly could, and it didn't go off as well. I didn't have enough power for it, so it sucks. I mean, I wish I could have saved him. Backstab kill. I just poured most of my mana into Night and only left me 1 emergency heal. Yeah, I mean, you try to keep that emergency heal up, like he was saying, leave a little bit of power for that 1 extra one in case something bad happens. But with 2 clerics, I went ahead and spent it all thinking that you know, the other guy could do it if I wasn't able to, because I'm healing, which means he's not, and I guess he was actually healing as well. That's how hard he was taking the hits, so that really sucks. I guess he has a main that can res, so that's kind of nice when you have it to work that way. You know, with me and my brother who used to play with us, you know, he had the druid, and I had a cleric, and we were on 2 different accounts because, you know, we played at the same time a lot of the time. You know, not always together, but we were on during the same kind of hours, so we needed 2 accounts, and that was back when, you know, you had to pay monthly for the account. It's free to play now, but it doesn't help. I can't root the barbs. Yeah, can't do anything to those barbs. They're way too high for me. But with both of us playing, druids eventually get res, and it's not the greatest res in the world. I think the highest they possibly get is like our level 39 res or something like that. So it does like 50 or 70% or something like that. And anytime I would die on my Shadow Knight and I couldn't find a res, you know, because I have the Cleric on the same account, my brother would come over there and res me, and anytime he died, you know, with one of his other characters other than his druid, even with his druid, he would still have my Cleric come over there and res him. He'd put all the corpses in like one little location, keep them there, and then you know, at the end of the night I would show up wherever he was at, you know, Dark Like Wood or Burning Woods or whatever, and res like 12 corpses at one time, and he'd get back all that experience. So when he died, he wasn't, you know, broken up about it like some people would be, you know, as a druid, and he was one of those people who always soloed. He very rarely got into groups. He was kind of, you know, intimidated by him, and I can see why. I mean, I've gone huge stretches playing other games, and I come back to a game like this, and, you know, I'm out of practice on how to interact with a group and how to fight in a group and how to heal in a group. And it's pretty difficult when you're at higher levels to jump back into that and not make a lot of mistakes. So usually what I'll tell people is, hey guys, I'm just coming back to the game. You know, this is my character, obviously. I got him up to level 45, but it's been a while since I played him. I'm a little rusty, just to let you guys know. And you kind of have to relearn a lot of this stuff, but thankfully it's just like anything else in life. You know, when you take that summer vacation off from school and you come back and you get that refresher course in math, you know, it lets you instantly remember almost everything you learned in the last year in a matter of, you know, 2 or 3 days. So it's not like a huge, you know, relearn all over again, but it does take that 2 or 3 days before you feel, you know, comfortable again in your own skin playing that character. But for people who've never even had that and soloed all the way up to, you know, level 50, 60, whatever the cap is at the time you're playing, it's incredibly intimidating to jump into that and be like, okay, yeah, let's do a group. Who knows what that entails, right? It's like back in the day when we were playing, we didn't have YouTube videos that we could watch and see, you know, well, for him anyways. I was always in groups, so it wasn't a big deal for me. And what ended up happening is I would actually go over and sit behind him when he was playing the game at his place, and I would just watch him play, and then I would say, okay, now in a group you're going to be doing this. So you want to get rid of all of these weird spells you have activated for soloing. Like, he'd have all these like dots and direct damage spells and worst case scenario spells like evac and things of that sort. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to be using pretty much any of those. Where are your heal spells? And he's like, oh, I got 1 heal spell. I'm like, dude, 1 heal spell, that's it? If you join a group as a druid, chances are you're going to be the healer. I mean, yeah, you could be something, you could be the backup healer and you could be doing direct damage and stuff like that, but I would probably say 95% of the time you're going to be the healer. So if you don't feel comfortable healing, or you don't know how to heal, it's going to be kind of a rude awakening for you. And he was that way. Like, I think he used his heal spell just on himself, like throughout the entire game. He's never ever healed anybody else. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be rough, because one, your heal spells are different than my heal spells. You know, they use more power and they don't get as much health out of them. They take different amounts of time to cast. I'm like completely and totally used to how long mine take. I can get them down to the second. Your complete heal, I know right off the bat, 10 seconds. Superior heal, I think it was, you know, 5 or 6 seconds. to cast. So I knew when to cast it. I knew, okay, his life is going down at a steady rate. He has a little bit of aggro. Go ahead and cast that. Because I knew how much aggro my heal spells gave. With him, I had no clue. And what I found is druids have far, far, far more issues with aggro than my cleric ever did. And they can't take the hits where I mean, leather is what they're wearing. They're not even wearing plate like a cleric is. So they can't take the hits. And when he joined a group and I'm sitting there behind him and I'm trying to explain, okay, when they say this in the chat channel, you know, like camp check. He's like, what does that mean? I mean, they're just checking the zone to see, you know, what camps are available. Camps have already taken. Maybe they're doing it to see, you know, what groups they can get into, and they go over there to that room and check it out and be like, hey, you guys need anything? You know, a spot, you know, is there one open? Or maybe they're trying to figure out where their group is going to go. Or maybe they're trying to figure out how camped the zone is to make it worth their while to stay in it and see something pops open. You know, if there's 5 or 6 groups in the zone, it's an easy, nice little way of figuring that out. He didn't know what any of that was. When they asked him, you know, like a class check, he was like, what is that? And I'm like, well, that's just like when I join a group at a higher levels. Look like Poochie dropped. He dropped to get a fort. Okay. When I joined a group at a higher level for my cleric, I didn't want to do a who all on everybody in the group. And that's pretty much the only way you can positively figure out what classes everybody was. So what a lot of people will do when they join a group is just do a simple class check. They'll type it down in the little chat box, and everybody will list what class they are. And that way the cleric knows, okay, you're a necromancer, probably never heal you. Your life will constantly be going down and back up and down and back up because you're draining your life to give yourself power. And you know, it's better not to heal them for the most part. If you have the power and you have clarity or something like that, toss them a heal. It makes their life a little bit easier. But you know they're a necro. You know, okay, he's at 90% life. I'll just leave it like that. He's doing that on purpose to get a little bit more extra power. If you know they're a shaman and their life starts going down pretty fast, they're cannibalizing themselves. You can anticipate that and understand that, you know, he didn't just trigger a trap. He's not getting hit by an enemy. If he's the tank, you know, okay, that's the guy I need to buff up right away. Sit down. He's the guy I'm going to be concentrating on healing all the time. What F key is he? You know, like the first guy, F key, F1 is you. F2 is the second one in your group, so that would be Karad. But that's different every time you join. If I left the group and joined again, the names would be in a different order. So the first one in the list is always F2, then F3, F4, F5, and things of that sort. So I would always memorize, okay, the healer or the tank is F3 right now. And so if I was blinded, now I know I can just heal him right off the bat. I didn't have to do a who all. It just makes life so much easier on everybody when you do something like that. And he didn't know what that meant. He didn't know what, you know, like mana check, which is MC, meant that they wanted to know what his power level was. Because in Everquest 2, you can just see what somebody's power level is. And this one, you can't tell. So they need to constantly check. And of course, as a healer and as enchanters, you will kind of get a feel for when he wants to know. Like, if a tank is constantly running around and he stops, like this one is right here in front of us, this monk, and he's looking at us, he might want to know what our power levels are. Because he may be like, okay, there's a big pool coming up here. Me stopping in the room is sign enough that I'm interested. And then you'll just go ahead and post, 80%, 90% full power. And if that's what he wanted to know, he'll say thank you or okay, and then he'll run off and pull something, or he just may run off and pull something. And it saves like that, almost that unspoken, you know, exchange of information back and forth to each other, you know, where he doesn't have to type it out and you don't have to type anything out. You just hit your little hotkey and he knows right off the bat. But little things like that can throw you off and you're like, what are they talking about? Are they talking about me? Am I doing a bad job? Especially when you first join a group, you're very self-conscious, you know, you want to make sure you do a good job. You want to give a great first impression so that you can get into more groups and you don't look like an idiot. So it's kind of overwhelming, and I understand that because I saw what he went through with it. And I kind of went through it with him because, again, I was learning his class with him. You know, he knew how to solo, but he didn't know how to heal. I knew how to heal, but not as a druid. So I was learning what spells he had, and then I was like, oh, you got regen, don't you? And I'm like, I've always heard that was pretty good, so I had him putting that on people, and that was a noticeable increase, or decrease, I should say, in him having to heal. He didn't have to do it as often, and it was an amazing thing. I kept drooling over the fact that he got regen. Once I saw how well it worked, I wish clerics would get a regen, because it's an amazing thing to have. You don't know how many times in a group at higher levels you will have it. I just got hit by something. You will have it where a lot of your guys are damaged a little bit. You know, they're at 70%, they're at 85, 92, whatever, you know, different percentages. And you don't want to waste the power to heal them up, you know, because you're not full power and they're just slightly damaged and they don't take hits very often. And I've gone over this in the past where I was like, you just basically let them sit there and let their own life regeneration bring them back up to full power. And with him, he didn't have to do that. He tossed regen on, and almost everybody in his group was always full life. And you know, enchanters and things of that sort who get hit pretty hard, they may require like one heal, and he'd leave them at 70%, and like 30 seconds later they're full life again because they have so few hit points. And for me, I would literally, I guess you're just starting out on P99, Dim. Yeah. First. Yeah, they can always tell by inspecting you and seeing what kind of armor you have and how well you play the game, how long you've been here. You know, I'm not really doing a lot, so that might be what he's talking about, but for the majority, they're pulling ghouls, and I can't hit ghouls. Yeah. Yeah, we're both in bronze. Yeah, he's both. We're both in bronze, and I was telling him it's a really nice suit for the level that we're at. Obviously, it shows that we're not twinks or anything like that. First tune is always the hardest grind. Same here, first tune. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say first tune is always the hardest grind, but it does make things easier when you have a higher level tune that can kind of give you a little bit of platinum when you're running low, or maybe get you a few good items to start with. I mean, there's people who go all out and they get their stuff, you know, incredibly cool, you know, right off the bat. Everything they have is the best they can possibly get, you know, and you get that at level 1, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's one way to do it. But if you could just give your low-level character, you know, a good weapon and a good breastplate, you know, something like that, or a few good earrings, usually that's all you need to make a huge difference at a low level. Sometimes it's all you need to make a huge difference at a high level too. So yeah, it's just, you don't have to have, you know, all the money in the world to make a difference with a new character. But again, you are going to miss out on a few things. So if I ever start making a Shadow Knight, you know, I won't be that upset about power leveling him. Because, you know, or giving him a whole bunch of good armor and stuff like that to start him off with, because I've gone through just horrible times leveling that guy up by himself because he could never get into a group. So I'm more than happy to skip by some of that as fast as possible if I could. But other than that, if I started another character, like especially one that I'd never played before, like a ranger or a druid, I'd go slow. You know, I'd go slow, learn the class, learn how to play him, learn what he can do ultimately in different situations, so that I don't look like an idiot at higher levels, or as much of an idiot. We're all going to look like idiots at some point in this game, because there's just too much for any one person to know. And there's some people out there who are incredibly detailed oriented, and they're experts on certain things like stats, whereas tactics on how to pull a room, they're completely oblivious to, like they've never had to do it in their life. So they may take you to school on, you know, what armor you should be wearing and what the stats interact with other stats and what this does with that. And then when you get to a place they've never been before and you're pulling it and they're doing stupid stuff like getting next to walls that they shouldn't get too close to, or using spells they shouldn't use because it aggroes other spells, they look like idiots, you know, and it's just because they're not familiar with the intricacies of the zone that you're in. It's just a lot of details for everything in this game. So don't feel too bad. Again, if you get into a group and you look stupid for whatever reason, just be open to change, open to what people are saying. Hopefully they're being constructive and not just outright mean about it. If they're being outright mean about it, you're better off just leaving the group. Don't stay in places like that with people like that, because for the most part, the server is filled with really good people. You can find better, and it's more enjoyable to learn from a set of people who are being kind about it, you know? I mean, people will usually, when they find out that you're new to the game, will take you under their wing and be like, oh, okay, so you didn't know this, right? So here's some little tidbits that helped me out when I was that level. Strength, guarantee, must. Stamina, guarantee, must. You know, whatever class they're playing, they'll go ahead and give you some little tidbits about it, like I try to do when I make these videos. But be open to talking to people. I know it's kind of scary sometimes to just walk up to somebody and randomly start a conversation with them. But that's how some of the greatest friendships I've ever had in games like this have started, is just walking up to somebody randomly and saying, hey, I hate to ask, but could you help me with the corpse retrieval? My body is just right down that well. You're level 50. It'd take you like 10 seconds probably to run down there and pick up my corpse. For me, it would take me, you know, another year to get to that level. Is there any chance I could bother you for that? And most people would be like, yeah, that's fine, man. I've done that plenty of times when I was that level fighting in this zone. More than happy to help you out. And you start talking to them, and you find out you guys have a lot in common. They went through the same stuff you're going through. And eventually, if they continue to play the game, which most of them will, you'll max out at the same level they're at. And now you guys can actually go off and do things together. You can go off and do raids together. You can go off and see really cool zones and stuff. And if you're a cleric, you can give them reses. And if you're a druid, you can give them teleports. Or a wizard, you can give them teleports and things of that sort for different classes. So you all help each other out in some way at any one time. You know, you can pay it back. So it really comes into play that if you don't communicate with people, you're going to be missing out on a whole lot of this game. And I know when you guys watch these videos, I don't do a whole lot of typing and talking to people, and that's kind of unfortunate, but as I'm playing the game, I'm finding out more and more people use like Skype or Vent and things of that sort. So as the groups get higher and higher level, more and more people are going to be using those, and we're going to go to those and start talking with people and getting to know them a little bit more, and hopefully, you know, getting more people on our recordings, just get their opinions, because the game is really opinion based. I mean, you can play it any way you want. There's no right or wrong way of playing your class. There's more accepted versions of playing your class a certain way, but ultimately I've seen some of the most outrageous designs and playstyles actually come out being pretty cool. You know, I saw one monk, because monks in general usually don't use weapons, or they didn't for a very, very long time. They use like wraps, which are just gloves around their hands. And again, those had to be magical too if you want to hit the enemy. You had to have magic gloves on. But now they're starting to use weapons, and I remember when weapons started coming out from monks, and monks were trying them out and being like, oh, these weapons suck, don't ever use a weapon. There's the other side that was saying, oh, no, wraps suck, and you always have to use a weapon, you get better damage, and it hits slower, but you get better damage from it, and overall it's a higher DPS, which is damage per second. It just, ultimately, I think it won out on the fact that you did get more damage, and the DPS was higher. But for a while there, the old traditionist ones were just saying, you don't do it, it's not worth it. And they were winning out, and that was the accepted version. And a lot of people were swayed into not using weapons, because in groups people were like, get rid of those, put your wraps back on, you should be hitting faster, not harder. And some people bucked it, you know, and be like, no, this is the way we're doing it. If you don't like it, you can find another monk. And eventually their side won, and I think it was the right decision on their side. But you know, if you have a playstyle, if you want to be that cleric who is you know, the warrior cleric, and constantly get up there and melee, I think it's a mistake. But if you have fun playing it, and you can find people who are you know, okay with you doing that in a group, then all for it, man. Go do it, and tell me how well it was. Do a couple videos. I would love to see how well that works out for you, because ultimately, It's just about having fun. You know, if you're not having fun, if you're getting so drawn into the politics and the details of the game that you lose sight on what's the most important, and that's the friendships and the enjoyment factor of a game, because ultimately that's what this is a game. You know, and it's easy for some people to lose sight of that. I've seen people, you know, get married because of this game, and get divorced because of this game, and ruin a lot of relationships because of the game. And it's because they lose sight that it is a game. It's a great way to communicate with other people, and it's a great you know, tool to make friendships and even meet other people that you want to date and stuff like that. But it ultimately, first and foremost, is a video game, and you shouldn't lose sight of that. At least try not to, because it can be kind of devastating when you do. Let's see who's all in the zone. So we got 18 people in this zone right now, and I've been talking for a while, so I'm probably going to go ahead and end the video here. Again, guys, if you like these videos, please hit the like button. Subscribe definitely helps grow my channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, if you have any comments, I've been getting a few of them here and there, but would love to hear back more from you guys. You're more than welcome to comment. Just say, hey, you know, I enjoyed the video, or no, I think you should do this instead. Do more first person, do more third person. I'd love to see this zone. I'd love to see more quest. I would love to hear about this topic, or did you ever go to this zone? You know, I like to interact with you guys. It's not just about me sitting here rambling on why I play a camp here in Unrest or Crushbone or wherever I happen to be. It's about connecting with you guys, as I've said before. So, again, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode.